Please write them down on the cards that I think you were given and raise your hand. We will collect those cards. The only other thing I might have forgotten, if there are any other candidates in the room that would like to introduce themselves that's running in this election, please raise your hand now. I guess nobody. Okay. Betty Cook is going to proceed with the introduction of the candidates and the meeting, the question and answers for them.
Now, what we've all been waiting for, we're going to have our open forum, and all the school board candidates, if they would come up and sit down behind the names that we have written, please. And then I'm going to have you all introduce yourself and do just a real short bio. And then we're going to start asking questions.
Good evening. My name is Richard Pierce. I'm running for school director for Stroudsburg School District. I'm seeking a second term. One of my biggest accomplishments is energy reduction. I've taken roughly reduced our energy costs between $300,000 and $400,000. We won't know exactly what that figure is till the second year once we track what it is. We took and borrowed off of that to do infrastructure to cover the cost, and basically the long and short of it is we flatlined our energy costs for 20 years. The next big thing I want to go to work on is taking our bus fleet to liquid natural gas, and that will allow us to buy a new fleet without in cost flatlining our transportation costs. And these are the things that we need to have happen on our board to save our tax dollars. I'm asking for your support for a second term. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cindy Blake. And I was born and raised in this area, and my husband of 22 years, Michael Blake, graduated from Stroudsburg High School. I have two children that went through the Stroudsburg School District and are now in college, and they are doing well. I was actively involved in my children's education when they were in school. I attended the board meetings for over 13 years. I served in the PTA for over 10 years. 7 of those years, I took the lead as president. I then became the parent ambassador for 4 years at the junior high. I am now a lifetime member of the Pennsylvania PTA. Every child deserves the same education as my children received. I would like to preserve the programs that we have and make them stronger for our students. Education must take priority. We can do this effectively and at an affordable cost for our community. I would also like to control spending and taxes for our community members. We need to stay fiscally responsible and accountable to our students, community, and district in order to maintain a balance we can all live with. This is achievable by working together to end wasteful spending and cut costs where appropriate and save where we can. I also ask for your support in the November 5th election. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Steve Harper, and I'm running for the Stroudsburg School District. Why am I running? I'm a parent. I have 2 children that have already gone through the system. I have a 6-year-old at Clearview. I'm very active in the PTA at Clearview. I'm a small business owner. I'm a property owner. In the 15 years that I've lived here, my taxes have almost tripled. Our tax base is not a piggy bank, so I'm very concerned as it relates to that. I was the vice president and chief security officer at Battery Park City in New York. I was directly responsible for the evacuation, response, and recovery for both bombings and the Miracle on the Hudson. And I'm also a CPP, which is a Certified Protection Professional, which is the highest level of designation of security management one can get. I'm very concerned about emergencies and if our school system is prepared for emergencies and how are parents notified when things occur. A crisis doesn't happen when it's convenient. I also am also concerned about the direction of this community in terms of the educational vision. When you build a house, when we built our house, we had a blueprint. We had an idea of where we're going. We do not have a blueprint here. We do not know where we're going. There's no investment. So when I look at the future, I see a lot of wasted opportunity because there's a lot of talent here. Unfortunately, we do not work together. I like to work in that direction to help move us in that way. One voice, one community. I ask you for your support. My name is Steve Harper. Oh, lastly, I do have a degree in investment analysis from NYU, real estate investment analysis. So I do understand the overall breadth of the crisis that we're dealing with. Thank you very much.
Good evening. First of all, I just want to thank you all for giving us some of your time. I know how valuable my time is, and I'm sure yours is at least that valuable. So thank you for being here. And thank you to the Tea Party for making this available. I felt it was unfortunate up until tonight that we had no opportunity to meet you in public and share our ideas. So I'm grateful for those things. My wife and I moved here probably 23 years ago. We raised 2 children, one who has graduated college, kind of scary to think about that, and another one who's about to. And we have a daughter in 7th grade in Stroudsburg. So we're very proud of our Mounties. We're very proud of the Stroudsburg School District. And within those 20 plus years or so, we've seen our community change. We saw an influx of people. We saw an expansion in buildings. We saw an expansion, an increase in our taxes. And one day I was at a field hockey game, and a friend of mine, he's over there at the other end of the table, was talking about the school board. And one day I said, love you like a brother, but you're full of beans. He said, he said, I challenge you to come to one school board meeting and see how it's run, and then tell me I'm full of beans. Well, I've been going pretty much to every other school board meeting ever since. And I encourage all of you, if you don't regularly attend school board meetings, to please make the time to do that. I've been in business for, over 23 years or so. Before that, I was a social worker, and I graduated from Penn State. And in those 23 years in business, I've worn a lot of hats. I've been involved in purchasing large assets. I've been involved in building the distribution network for Purina Mills products throughout New England and New York, building a sales team, so on and so forth. And that's the key. That's the key, is to understand, to define where you want to go, know what your product is, the quality of the product, then build a team to get where you want to go. And we can do that, folks, without increasing our taxes 33% and making decisions to drive people out of their homes. Thank you very much for your time again, and I hope that you'll consider supporting me. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Deana Susinskas, and I too am running for Stroudsburg Area School Board. Pretty much a lifelong resident of the area. I moved here when I was 5. I graduated from Stroudsburg High School in '94, so that does put me old enough to run for election here. For me, education has afforded me a lot of opportunities, and I didn't come from a silver spoon family. I worked very hard. I paid for my own college. I worked full time. So education means something very personal to me. As someone who works with business owners every day, I hear their gripes. With the economic downturn the last 5 years, it's been really painful for them. I've seen what they've had to do to make sure their businesses are sustainable and keep moving forward. They've cut employees, they've taken cuts. Everyone has had to kind of become a part of this to keep the businesses going. And I think it's commendable. And I hear, I'm really impressed, and, just to see what's going on. And then I hear about them talk about their taxes and how the government gives them no break. Townships are terrible to them. You want to build something, it's a nightmare. 20% of your construction cost is permitting, and you just kind of take all this in, and you're like, none of this makes sense. So for me, because education is what I care about, I thought that's where, I could use my voice and my expertise and my interests. I have 2 boys in this district as well. I have an 8 and 10-year-old, and my husband works in the community, and, I'm involved personally and professionally every day. And I guarantee you that my business owners and my accountants and lawyers, they will all keep me accountable on the board. I'm not too worried about that. So I hope to gain your support. I have an accounting degree. I've worked in finance for 15 years, and I'm currently pursuing an MBA. So, finance and numbers is definitely my thing. So thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you, Stroudsburg candidates. Now we're going to introduce you to the East Stroudsburg candidates.
Good evening. My name is Joyce Billick. I'm running for East Stroudsburg School Director. I've been a resident of East Stroudsburg for almost 24 years now. And I figured it was finally time for me to step up and do something for my community. I've always had an interest. I have to say that most of the time my interest took me to the internet, and I would read minutes and agendas and see what was going on with the school board. And I said, maybe I can make a difference. My experience has been working with educators and working with teachers for most of my working career. I have a strong interest in seeing that the children who graduate from our school are able to go forward with what they want to do with their lives, whether it be going to college or going to the trade school, that they're prepared for this. I also am very concerned about the state of our economy here in our school district. I know that the taxes for my house have gone up well over 400%, and we don't have a pool. We haven't made adjustments to our house. We haven't improved it. We have the same house that we moved into almost 24 years ago. And my neighbors are feeling the same thing. I have neighbors telling me that if it keeps on going, they're leaving. And I think it's time that we look at this school budget, which seems to be growing rapidly every year, and see what we can do to control the costs. We have to educate our children. We need teachers to teach these children. We need support staff for these children. But beyond that, we have to see where we can save the money and where we can help the taxpayers. The time has come to examine this budget and see where all this money is going.
Good evening. Gary Summers. I'm retired. I live in Middle Smithfield Township. I've lived there for 7 years after retiring and moving here from New Jersey. I was in the corporate world for approximately 35 years, just about every functional area of the business except manufacturing. I left that job and sort of got into semi-retirement by being controller for a small business for 5 years. When I moved here, I decided it was time to really find out how this area operated. So I got very involved in township, going to township meetings, getting involved in committees, started to attend school board meetings, and I've been a regular attender and observing how the school board operates over the last 7 years. I decided that I really needed to run for the school board to become a director based upon my belief that the way the school board has typically handled and functioned from a financial budgeting standpoint seriously needs a lot of improvement, and that's my strength. I think it's totally unacceptable when a board of directors approves a budget and then never has quarterly financial reviews of performance, which I'm used to in the business world, and they wait until the auditor comes in 17 or 18 months later to tell them how they did. I think that's unacceptable. I think the board needs to be much more involved in telling the administration up front what they expect from the administration from a financial standpoint. I realize it's not easy. I do understand and appreciate the fact that we don't get our fair share out of Harrisburg, nowhere near it. Harrisburg knows it, our local representatives know it, but a school board director needs to do more than just say, call your legislator and ask them to get more money out of Harrisburg. You know, school board directors need to come up with creative ideas and solutions. And one of the things that I intend to do is to implement an entire new approach to how the school district prepares its annual budget with more direction from the school board directors. One other thing that I have uncovered and really observed since I decided to run for the school board is I think the school district is missing what I have always believed is the most strongest attribute of any organization, and that is the power of their employees. I don't believe that the administration spends enough time tapping into the skills and knowledge of the people that work in the district, whether they be professional staff, whether they be support staff. These are the people that have their hands on the business every single day. These are the people that can come up with new creative ideas on how to do things better, whether it be in the classroom or whether it be in the cafeteria. And oh, by the way, I think these are people that know every single day that there's ways to do things more efficiently. So one of the things that I intend to do after I get elected is to basically have the administration, through the superintendent, sit down and begin to do things that I'm familiar with in the business world, is where you have executive levels meetings on a regular basis with people that are actually working and try to break down those barriers, because I think all too often the people are concerned about being retribution, they're concerned about making waves, and I like people to make waves because that's where all creative solutions come from. So that's why I want to run for school board. I appreciate your support, and I look for your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
I know you came in late. We're just asking you to introduce yourself and give us a short bio. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bob Gress. I'm currently a school board member. A little history about myself. I'm married for 26 years. I have 3 kids. 2 graduated from the district and are attending 4-year colleges. I was an operations manager for numerous years, almost 16 years as county administrator in Monroe County. Previously, I also served on the Pleasant Valley School Board when I was living in the Pleasant Valley School District, where I served as president. I was on the East Stroudsburg Board. I have been a member of the Monroe County Career and Technical School and IU-20. I serve on the Budget Committee and also on the Building and Grounds, chairman for the Building and Grounds Committee. And we have numerous committees that meet throughout the year, every month actually, and curriculum, like I said, building and grounds, budgeting, policy, and other committees that we meet throughout every month besides our regular school board meetings. I'm running for the district again. As I said, I have 2 children who graduate from the district, receive an excellent education beginning in kindergarten through 12th grade. I want all children to have that same opportunity that my 2 children had. I also have a son who's in 8th grade, and again, I want all children to have the same opportunity in East Stroudsburg Area School District. For 2 consecutive years, we have not raised taxes, and that is even though the state and the feds continue to cut fundings. So when the state legislators and the state senators, everybody start telling you that they're giving us more money, the fact is they're not. If you take out the mandated costs for pensions, which the state voted on years ago, we're actually receiving about $2 million less than we did 4 years ago. And again, I got on the board 8 years ago, and our fiscal house was a mess. The last time we had 3 people running for school board in East Stroudsburg, we took a turn for the worse. A building project for $40 million went up to $95 million in East Stroudsburg, and that's the fact. We're stuck paying for that building now for about 28 more years. That cost alone is $3 million. And a lot of times I repeat this because people they forget history, and history is very important in East Stroudsburg. We had an elementary school instead of a building, a similar elementary school for about 10 or 12 million. We spent $32 million to build an elementary school. That cost was about another $1 million. We renovated a school, and we shouldn't have renovated. That was another about $250,000. So we're stuck with about $4 million a year in costs just strictly on building costs in our district. It's a fact. It's there. And we're stuck with these things. We built a high school north many, many years ago. We're stuck with that. We have 2 high schools in this district and 2 middle schools. It's very expensive to run a school, 2 high schools and 2 middle schools. We've done a remarkable job keeping taxes where they are. And again, people were looking for the plan. We built up a fund balance to get up for the pension spike, which everyone talked about years ago. We we took a proactive approach, took some tough measures, and built up a fund balance so we can get through the next couple years on this pension spikes. Again, Harrisburg keeps punting this thing down the road. They keep doing all these mandates. You see all these newsletters coming out there doing all these nice things for the community, and they're not dealing with the pensions or the roads or anything else. They're doing these nice things. What I did when I was running, here's the funding in our district right here. It's a simple thing. Notice the purple and the blue. That's East Stroudsburg. We get the least in our area right here. We get about $1,700 a kid. Pleasant Valley gets about $3,900. Stroudsburg gets about $2,000. And Pocono Mountain gets just under $2,000. We're the worst. We get the least funded in the state of Pennsylvania, in Monroe County, Northeast Pennsylvania. Many schools in Pennsylvania, they get $6,000, $7,000 a kid, and we get $1,700. So it's, again, we're working on it. We keep working on it. I keep pressuring, Harrisburg. I call, email all the time, and it's important to keep, again, that in perspective when we're doing things. And we're doing things slow. You can't turn a ship overnight. You make waves, you end up capsizing boats, and you end up drowning. The ship didn't turn quickly, and we have to bring this thing back on course, which we've been doing the last couple of years. So I ask people, again, to support me. They know me in the community. I've been involved. I've been a volunteer coach, volunteer the reader in the schools. I was county administrator for 16 years. I know budgeting, I know building, I know bond issues in many areas that I feel I can be very productive over the next 4 years. Thank you.
We're going to start asking questions. If anyone has index cards with questions and wants to turn them in, Judy's going to take care of this part of the program. And I just want to thank all the school board candidates for coming out. And thank you all for coming out and meeting those who are running. Here, Judy.
On the table. Any more cards? Any more questions? Stand up. Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. Okay. We don't have enough time to let everyone answer every question. So what we do want to hear from as many of the candidates as we can. So what I will do is I will read out a question and I'll let somebody from each side answer. And if somebody has a diametrically opposed or allergic reaction to somebody's answer, then weigh in. But we'd want to try to avoid, in the 45 minutes we have left, of you just repeating what the last person just said. So one of the very first concerns that comes out is the federal government took $6 million and built a website that doesn't work. That's what I meant to say, 600 million. I'm sorry. Can't read. Steve Jobs would have done it faster and for less money. So, are you willing to run the school from an administrator perspective, not a classroom curriculum, but from an administrator perspective, as efficient and like a business? Anybody over here want to take that question quickly? You'll lose your chance. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Well, I've been trying to do that since I've been on the board. That was part of my reason for running. My first experience was I went to a meeting with my son that was working on his Eagle Scout project, and he had to go to citizens in the community. I listened to a consultant that the school district was paying $19,000 to about how to take care of his fields. And he was saying that I didn't realize he didn't have sprinkler systems. I wouldn't have you put fertilizer down on the baseball field in July. But we can fix it for $35,000. I said, wait a minute, why don't we pump out a creek? And his response to me was, well, son, you can't do that. Well, it took me 45 minutes to get the permit waiver from DEP, and we water all our fields, and we spent $7,000. You don't fix problems by throwing, the solution isn't putting money against problems, it's correct the problem. And you have to figure out how to make it run economically. There's a cost associated to everything, and there's a cost of making things run efficient, and then you can just waste money. And if something doesn't work and dump more money, it doesn't fix the problem. You've got to correct the base problem. I've been a business person for 35 years. I live and die by budgets. You figure out, you network, you do what you got to do. But we have wasted a lot of money in all government with the idea of correcting the problems to put more money into it. And we got to stop that.
Okay, if you can't hear somebody, I'll walk the mic to them, so just raise your hand if you can't hear somebody. Anybody over here want to take that question quickly?
Yeah, in East Stroudsburg, what we've done
Half a minute, maybe?
as far as the mandate, the management team, we don't have a lot of assistant principals. All our elementary schools, it's a principal. We've shared principals over the years to curtail money. We don't have assistants to the assistants and the superintendents and so on along that line. And we have one of the leanest administrative staffs in the district. We do occasionally use consultants, but on the other hand, when I first got on the board, the prior board, hired a consultant for $1.4 million to oversee a construction project where we had an individual who oversaw the whole North Campus, and there was no change orders. And like I said, we were stuck paying $1.4 million for a consultant who I don't want to say friends of the boards, but friends of the boards, and just the way the consultants things worked. So we do look in the community for things. Again, we do use our professional staff for a lot of things, whether it's our food service program, our maintenance and engineering. Next year, when our maintenance director retires, or this year I should say, and our custodial staff retires, we're going to combine those commissions and have one person overseeing that department rather than two, and that'll be a savings of approximately $50,000 to $75,000. So we are looking at it. Sometimes you do need the professionals in those positions to make the right decisions for us, because they're on a day-to-day running the show 7 days a week, and while we're there part-time overseeing or orchestrating the staff. Thank you.
Okay, next question.
It's not.
Okay, we'll try to make sure. Can you hear when I talk? Okay, then I'll just take over. You guys can go home. You're probably tired anyhow. Okay, so I'm a lawyer. Does anybody know the difference between a lawyer and sperm? This is a serious question. If you don't know that difference, I'm worried if you're going to find your car. The difference between a lawyer and a sperm is that a sperm has a 1 in a million chance of becoming a human being. We used to be the scum of the earth, the profession that was the least respected by the general population, but we have been outranked by the real estate agents. That wasn't my opinion. I read that in the newspaper. Okay, now back to what matters. How would you feel about the teachers not getting a raise for a while? I feel that they need to wait for 3 years. This is the person's opinion, due to the faltering economy. They aren't above the average person's challenges when it comes to finances. So anybody over here want? Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
I think I'm loud. To talk about the teacher salary and concessions, I do think it's completely reasonable, and it has to happen for them to take some concessions, not only on salary but also on health care. They have a very nice, rich program, and it's not to market, and we need to look at everything. The other side of that, though, is when you're going to them, this is a negotiation between the administration and the teachers, and we need both sides to work together. And I think if you've been to board meetings, you've seen that we have two polarized sides, and we can't have that going forward. You have to treat them well, respect them when you talk to them, and I think if you have that rapport and you come to them and say, listen, you can't have this, we're going to do this, I think they're going to respect you more and accept that a little bit easier. So I would be in favor of that.
Thank you. Anybody over here? Sure. Gary?
The question was for what, 3 years? Yeah. 3 years?
That was your suggestion.
First of all, I don't agree with that. It's my understanding that there are some differences in salaries within the county, whatever. But I know in the East Stroudsburg district, the teacher's contract is up, I believe, next year. I don't know what the specific issues are going to be at this point in time, but I do believe that it is important to have not only a fair contract for both the school district and the teachers, but it's also important to make sure that we don't do something that drives qualified and quality teachers away from the classroom. So don't misinterpret what I'm saying from the standpoint of writing blank checks for people that are looking for increases in this, that, or the other thing. I think we need to be fair. But I don't, at the same time, don't think it's appropriate to say, well, gee, you're going to have to take no pay cut or no pay increase for 3 years. I think it's important enough to consider to look at all of the opportunities and avenues that we have to make sure that the people are paid well. We have an interesting situation in East Stroudsburg that doesn't necessarily deal with teachers. We have over 600 support workers that haven't had a contract for 2.5 years. I mentioned earlier about I think it's really important for a business to make sure they have fully engaged, committed employees. And I think one of the travesties of the East Stroudsburg School District over the last 2.5 years is how can you have engaged, committed employees that are really working for the mission of the business if you haven't had a contract in 2.5 years? So I think there's a problem there. Again, I don't know what the issues are. I'm not involved in negotiating a contract. Some of these people may be, but I think that's unfortunate that you're losing an opportunity to have committed employees when you don't have a contract for 2.5 years.
Does anybody on either side want to take the position that some of the taxpayers don't have an employment contract? And that they aren't guaranteed employment, let alone guaranteed a raise? Does anybody want to, nobody? Comment on that perspective?
I think you just did a great job. I mean, I can expand a little bit. Thank you. I think that poses an interesting and very important fact, and that is that in my business, my contract is completely dependent on my ability to generate profits. So a school is not a business. There is no opportunity there to generate profits. So we can't treat our school employees the same way we do me. However, that being said, we still have to look at what's affordable. And the real question as we go forward in Stroudsburg is we have $100 million. That's 33% higher than it was in 2007. Now the question is, where do we spend that money? And guaranteed contracts, assuming that things are always going to be the way that they were in the future, is one of the things that is taking that money and putting it places where taxpayers didn't intend it to go. And legacy costs, I believe Mr. Clark called it one time. It's a real problem. The assumption that people deserve a job is an assumption that no one really should have. It has to be something that's earned on a consistent basis. Thank you.
Okay, a lot of the questions have to do with finance, so hopefully I'll get the points across without redundant questions. How can you retain creative programs for our children and yet stop the runaway union-based finances that we need to stop, and also take into consideration the loss of students and their families' higher taxes? So I think the issue is we're losing students in some of the districts. Taxes are higher for the family, and the unions are continuing to cost more. How do we keep creative programs for the students given all those factors? Anyone over here?
I think there's a lot of ways that we look to do this. In my experience, you have to look outside the box. You have to look at different ways to get funding as opposed to the traditional ways. In terms of the creativity of the staff and the program, I believe the best way to do that is to get everyone invested in the process. Right now, we do not have that. We do not have the ability to sit down in a room and say, this is the direction that we're moving in. How do we create something creative if we don't talk among ourselves? I've had the opportunity to talk to both sides, And oftentimes they're very good ideas. But the situation is because of a label, people are not listening. So the first thing that we need to do as a community and as an organization is to listen to each other. So it's not your idea, not my idea, it's the best idea. Then as it relates to the keeping creative programs, for example, where I worked, you have, and say looking outside the box, we took 0.5% of the total development cost and created a fund for people to go to school. Now, we can also write grants. In a 6-week period, we investigated, and we found $3.7 million worth of grants that were available for this school district for different programs that we didn't even apply for. And let me be really clear. There was $750,000 for gym. So, I mean, gym. But we don't look beyond what's the obvious. So, one, talk to each other, listen to each other, collaborate for creative ideas, and look for external ways to bring in ways that are non-traditional, to bring in funding. Thank you.
Okay, the first thing about grants that you have to understand is they evaporate and they go away. All right, we started all-day kindergarten with a grant program that lasted for 3 years, then the burden came upon us. When you reach out and you get involved in grants, you have to be very careful. One-time grants are a great thing. You get a grant to build a gym, you get a grant to buy computers, you get grants to create programs, is great. But you can't live on a school district off of grants because they dry up and they blow away and you're stuck holding the bag. A lot of the strings that come along with grants make grants not affordable to you in the long run. And if you take a look at grants, you have to look at 5 years down the road when you don't have the grant, what can you do and what can't you do? Because a lot of times you can't afford the grant. It's great the first 2 years, but the third, fourth, and fifth year it kills you.
One of the things that we did, we started looking at certain of the offerings and combining classes. We might have had keyboarding, we may have had computers, we may have had business. So what we had were 3 of the same classes being offered, taught, but really they were the same classes. So as teachers retired, we didn't replace those teachers. And so as a result, again, it's a slow process to fix the problem. So as a result, we combined classes. We still offered that class, but it wasn't offered 3 sections. It may have only been 1 or 2. So as a result, you over time save that, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a teacher. As far as extracurricular activities, the same thing there. If there's certain classes that were being offered to combine some, or maybe cutting down the frequency they meet, you still have them, but you have them. But certain things are expensive. Certain things I will not vote for cut. Driver's ed was one. I figured if you save one life in driver's ed behind the wheel, that's worth that program. And I fought for it for years. They wanted to get rid of it. And I said, no, if for the $200,000 it costs for the North and South High School, if it saves one life a year, it's saved. My brother's Principal Pleasant Valley, and he's buried dozens of kids out there. And not because you had this or not, but that's the worst feeling that I could even imagine. And I will never, ever vote to cut that program. There's a couple other ones, the same thing. We have to look at it slowly. All-day kindergarten. We went ahead and went with all-day kindergarten because in the long run, it saves money. You might identify kids early, lower class size in K through 3. Lower class size, you'll identify the kid early, and you may save 7, 8, 9 years of special education costs, which again, in a long term, will save you maybe $200,000, $300,000 per kid over those 6, 7 years compared to that initial cost for that program. So there's certain things that we do, identifying kids earlier, like I said, and helping the kids get through certain things. And again, identifying them early helps you in the long run. It makes them better students, better college students, a more productive workforce of what is all about as far as educating our kids. So there's are things we have to look at and again continue looking at, and some things again I will not vote to cut for because it is important. Again, as I said, my children had those education opportunities, and I believe all those children have those opportunities also because in the long run it will benefit our area and our county. Thank you.
Okay, there's a question here that's got several parts. Why don't we have a certain amount of money per student that follows the student to a religious school or to a cyber school or to a charter school, along the lines of what we've heard referred to as vouchers. And so would you be in support of a program or a piece of legislation in Pennsylvania that said that the money follow the student, and you as a public school would probably have to vie for those students and the corresponding voucher? Did I make that question clear? Anybody over here want to take that risk of answering that question?
I'm not sure, but the question is, you know,
Okay, well, she was going to, she was going to answer it. Okay, you want to?
Just so I fully understand. So
Yes.
you're asking, would it be acceptable for, like, if you allotted $9,000 a kid, you could either use it in the public school or apply it towards the cost?
Right, and so they realize that you don't, this isn't your decision so much, but would you as an individual, if this were to come up as a legislative draft, would you oppose it because you were a school board and you kind of wanted to, you know, it's not invented here type of attitude, or would you think that is overall good for education?
But that's not the voucher program for letters here.
If you take your son or daughter and put them into a cyber school, they're getting whatever the school would give that child.
But if they go to Moravian, it's not.
Right, we don't have it, we have a hybrid of it right
We have a
now.
hybrid.
I'd like to answer that question.
Well, let Deana answer. Well, I don't know that I would be in favor of that, and my reason being, I do think that we should have choices, and I think that if, you know, a religious avenue is for you, I think that's great. I think homeschooling is another great opportunity. My concern would be, it would definitely be a split of the classes, because social classes, because obviously the haves and have-nots, everyone that would be left in the public schools would probably be, you know, not very well-off children. It would be concerning. I would be concerned what public education would really be then, and would it really be public education or really a detention center. So that does concern me.
Okay, the money would follow the student, so you wouldn't end up with an economic shifting of the pile, because my income wouldn't make any difference. My money, let's say it was $16,000. So if I went to the public school, my parents said, your school's the best one for my child, here's my student, you'd get your 16. If they chose the cyber school would get it. So it wouldn't, I'm not sure if it would mean that the haves and have-nots would divide that way, you know, possibly.
So my comments will really talk about public education. So private school is not public education, and in my opinion, homeschooling is not a public education. And we have sort of a strange arrangement right now, but it's totally unfair to the public school system. I'm not opposed to an approach where the parents can make a decision. Is it more appropriate for my child to go to a public school or to a cyber school or to a charter school? I don't have an issue with that. There's nothing wrong with competition. But right now, there is no competition because the playing field is not fair. So if you have a chance to talk to somebody, they need to change the way the cyber and charter schools are funded, because dollars do flow, but here's the problem. The problem is this local school district sends money to the cyber or the charter school that's based upon what they spend. The expenses on the cyber and the charter schools are a lot less, and the funding formulas that come out of Harrisburg are different. So it costs our district money every time somebody goes from a public school into a cyber or a charter school. Now, if that could all be equalized somehow, some way, then I don't have a problem with that. But right now, it's not, okay? So I would not be in favor of doing anything that has money follow the student in a public school setting, because right now it doesn't, and it's totally inequitable.
Okay, this question is for the Stroudsburg School Board members and candidates. How do you envision making it easier for teachers to be more effective in the years to come? Anybody want to answer that? Effective, yeah. How do you as a school board envision making it easier for teachers to be more effective in the coming years? Okay.
If I am elected, one of my goals is to try to give the teachers more of a voice, to try to make them more active in what they do in the classroom. Because, as it was stated before, they are the people who are in contact with our children. They know what's going on in the classroom. I would like to see, if there is such a thing as a curriculum meeting, more teachers involved, more input from the teachers, and it followed through, not dictated by administration what they will teach and what they will not. That's what I would like to see.
I have a different answer. Science, yes. Science, technology, engineering, and math. STEM. When we look at what it's going to take for us to be a competitive economy in the future, those are the 4 keys. And the really cool thing about STEM is that we're not limited by the taxpayer resources. It incorporates corporations and local businesses. So we're not just following the same thing over and over again. I heard someone use an analogy. They said, if our transportation system were run like our education system, buggy whips would still be the top seller and wheelwrights would be the largest union in the country. And we need to embrace that change and look for outside input in our schools. Thank you.
Anyone over here? No takers?
Do you want us to tell the Strasburg should do? Strasburg should do.
All right. This one is I think it's addressed to Bob Cook. Please name the specific ideas you have developed for financial improvements other than telling constituents to call Harrisburg.
Here, Bob forgot one thing, which he did do. On the Vocational Technical School Board, which I was on and Bob was on. Bob was chairman of the VOTEC, and he shepherded the funding formula through that process. That was in disarray for years for whatever reason. But the short of it was East Stroudsburg was getting shortchanged. We couldn't send enough kids there because of our North Campus. So Bob, as president of the board and working with the other school boards, and I was on it on the board, one of the 3 members. The 4 school districts sends 3 members to the Vocational Career Technical Institute, so everybody knows. The funding formula was totally out of whack. We couldn't send enough kids. We were subsidizing 2 of the other school districts. So it took many years, and finally this year it was approved. All the boards unanimously finally agreed to it. There was some give and take, but we were saving upwards of about $300,000, which is about 3/4 of mill taxes right there. It should have been higher. We weren't happy, but again, it's give and take like anything else. Some of the other school districts have to pay a little bit more, but things like that, which again take long term. I want to dig my heels in a little bit more, and Bob took the higher road and worked with the other school board members, and Stroudsburg, and again Pleasant Valley and Pocono Mountain. Everybody came together and unanimously voting for the change, which again was a way to find additional funding for us, because you pay for the students you're sending, not some antiquated formula from 1969 or 1971 that East Stroudsburg was penalized because we had a North Campus. So again, we do look at things. There are ways that and sometimes in the short term, somebody wants a notice or a point wants to, but there are things that Bob didn't take credit for, which again he was chairman of that board.
Okay, this is another one for Stroudsburg School Board. Anybody? Was it different?
Yes. One of the things that I think that the East Stroudsburg School Board should have been doing all this time is championing a drive out to Harrisburg, taking people with them and knocking on doors. I recently went with the group here with Gary Smith, and that's exactly what we did. We knocked on doors and we told the legislators how bad our situation was in this school district. and how bad we are hurting. And I'm trying to get my neighbors to do the same thing, but I think it is something that our school board should champion and get out to the students, the parents of the students and anyone else, and let's go out there as a group and get them to listen to us. Right now, you can't have 20 people go out there from East Stroudsburg and make a difference. You can't have 5 people a week call and make a difference. You have to go out as a group. You have to show them a crowd. And I think that's something that we should do as a school board, to try and raise their awareness about how many of us there really are.
I'd like to respond to that, but it goes to reality on the subject. I have to go out to New Richland every year for school, one of the suppliers I deal with. And here, my first year to school board, at lunch, the CEO of the company comes and sat down with me, and he looks at me and says, "What the hell is wrong with you people want to change the funding formula for schools? Who would want to give up 75% funding?" I looked at him and said, "We don't get 75% funding, we want it." But you got to think about that. Who in the western part of the state, the central part of the state, that has it made in the shade for their funding for school is going to vote to change something? Right. It's not going to happen. The fight is, I don't see how, unless there's a total revamp that comes out, that we're ever going to get change and get equal funding. But you go out there and pound on the doors, but the guy from Lebanon County that represents his people is getting 75% is never going to vote to change something that's going to make him get 50%.
You have to remember that those areas are much larger than we are, that get the most funding.
Well, Lebanon is actually a little farm community in the middle of nowhere, but I pondered that. It's like, if I represented this group of people and I wanted my job, I would never vote against it. And that's you go about pounding on doors out there in Harrisburg, that's what you're pounding doors against. That's why it's been forever trying to get things changed.
And that's...
But I believe
that the funding situation started in the Hold Harmless in 1991. Okay? That's been a long time. I think I was... Well, anyway,
but they're still working with 1990 census.
I understand.
No,
That's a huge problem. However, in our situation, we have this decreased funding. Or we don't get enough, we don't get our fair share. That's fine. But it doesn't explain why our budget increased 33% from 2007. No one in Harrisburg said, "Gee, you've got to spend $25 million more dollars." They didn't say that. We can't blame Harrisburg for this ever-increasing, well, we can. There's some unfunded mandates and things like that involved. So we need to, we just need to accept that we can control what we can control. So let's do that. Let's get our hands on it and do it.
Okay, that leads up to the next question for Stroudsburg. Go ahead, I'll pause. Okay, that's a good thing because we know there's still a wait up there. Okay, the cap between the union demands, or the gap between the union demands and the school board offer is $36 million. What would you do, Stroudsburg School Board candidates or members, what would you do to bring this to an agreement?
Well, I tell you what, I can tell you because I'm living in that. We went to fact finding. And one of the first things that we did when it came to contract negotiation, we hired an actuary to look at the next 5 to 7 years. And it told a very interesting picture. And we presented this to the union. We brought in a health consultant, third party, and went through what the health care cost is, what it's going to do to us, what the Obamacare is going to do to us. And we presented that to them. We're now going to fact finding. But you have to understand something. If the union has got to come around, and I got to clarify this. Our teachers and our union, in my opinion, are two different things. And the union necessarily doesn't represent the whole group of teachers. Okay? We are in the process of bringing around slow change in our union way of thinking, because the numbers don't lie.
And the idea that you're entitled every year to a raise is pie in the sky at this point in our economic climate. But we are trying to bring the facts to the table and say, this is where we're at. They don't lie. It isn't that we're sitting here saying we don't want to give you a raise. We can't afford to give you a raise. You know, just funding the unfunded mandate for retirement that Harrisburg hasn't done their side on is a burden on us that's going to keep getting bigger. But we have gone about getting facts out there to educate everybody where we're at. And we're on the next step, that fact finding. And when that's done, we'll see what that brings about in full debates with dealing with the union and their attitude, and we'll go to the next step. But we have been doing things to educate and work. And just like Steve keeps saying, we're trying to build harmony. We don't like the banging of the heads. And the easiest way to do it when a third party says, geez, we can't afford this health plan, you're going to have to change. It's not us saying we're going to take your health care away. It's the reality of where we're at. And there's a lot of things. And I believe that as we go through this process, and it'll take a period of time, they'll come around and say, okay, you're right, we're going to have to concede this, we're going to have to concede that. We can live with this. And that's how the process is working, that's where the process is going. And I can tell you, it's not going to be a fast process because nothing goes fast. Just trying to schedule a meeting between the two parties takes meetings upon meetings to get an agreed date. It's not like it goes on in private business. It's a whole different way. But that's how we've been dealing with it, and I think it's very fair to both parties. It's not one trying out to do the other. This is the reality of where we're at.
Okay. Anybody in this table want to say how you would close a gap like that if you were faced with a gap in contract negotiations?
Well, the fact finding is nice. We did that with the support staff.
It's now 8:40 and the library will close in 20 minutes, probably at 9.
But we had the fact finding, and we did do that. The board ended up approving it, and the support staff did vote it down because it did go to fact finding. Is nice sometimes. Problem is, it's not binding arbitration, and that's where it gets tricky. But as far as the health care, and I've been pointing out for quite years, we're in the trust down the IU-20, and one of the concerns that I've brought up over the years, the last couple of years, is what the cost is of health care, which no one wants to address. Nobody whatsoever on why it's costing so much for health care. And we've been monitoring some of the bills and some of the fees that are being charged by whether Pocono Medical Center, compared to Lehigh Valley, Geisinger, and St. Luke's and so on. And that's the key on what's driving the health care costs. And you have, yes, it costs so much money. We're self-funded and we have the stop loss and everything else through the IU Trust. So we're looking at other ways, maybe bringing it back in-house to try to save additional millions there. We spent $20 million in health care in East Stroudsburg. But it's through the trust. So what happens is, we might have $16 million in payouts. We have a $4 million balance then. So as a result, there's $4 million. We don't just give Blue Cross $20 million and they send us nice calendars. So there's a trust fund that's set up. But again, going back to why it's costing so much, and that's what's driving the healthcare costs. We can talk about Affordable Health Care Act, everything else, but you have to look back on why the doctor's bills are what they are. why is one person goes to the emergency room for, and the Times did a great article, and Pocono Record kind of, I don't know, they took some of it, but that the Time magazine a few months ago showed the actual cost, where one hospital might be $6,000, another $8,000. The reimbursement from somebody is X, is half that. If you pay cash, it's less. So that's where we've been pushing in East Stroudsburg to see why that cost is so high. And so, and again, that's something. So that's another whole topic. But I mean, just other things to look at there.
But why are we as a school self-funded and insured? Because part of the reason why our costs are a little more than what their cost is because we've had more catastrophic loss in a period of time, so our reserve fund has to go up, so our cost goes up. But yet, the state, all their different divisions are all self-funded. It doesn't make no sense. We should have one state fund we pay into, and the risk is shared between, I'm just picking numbers now, 1 million people versus 20,000 people. The saying is we had a good year, we only had 2 bypasses. We get 3 or 4 bypass surgeries, and we're putting an extra 9 or 10% in the reserve fund to cover this. Wow. Because we're self-funded.
Okay, has anyone, or does anyone on the board here have an opinion on whether or not they would be willing to support paycheck protection as part of the teachers' union contract?
What is that?
Okay.
That's the right check and we got to cover.
Paycheck protection is where the taxpayer does the bookkeeping for the union. And it's really an anomaly. But the union dues are extracted from the employee's paycheck. And so the taxpayer does all that bookkeeping. And you've all heard of Scott Walker?
Yeah.
Scott Walker did a lot of lower level, below the radar type changes. One of them was he got rid of he put in paycheck protection and said that you can't force a school board or a city or a municipality to extract or deduct dues. That's the job of the union. Let the union contact the union member and make arrangements to collect those dues. And so that saved the municipalities, saved the government money. But it also proved very interesting because one of the largest unions in that state failed to recertify because once they had to write that check, the union members didn't want to pay the dues anymore.
You have to understand in Pennsylvania.
So hang on just 1 second though, okay? So, and that was a heavy public union state. And Michigan's made some similar changes. We haven't made those changes here, but they can be made. I know our commissioners are looking at that. School boards, I think Mount Pocono was either looking at that or considering it. But so my question to all of you is that something that you would put on the table in your negotiations with either the teachers or any other unions that you have in your school district? Bruce? Bruce?
I'm sorry. Rich. It's a union negotiation question.
Yeah, but I'm sorry.
Let's just say in concept then, so we're staying away from any specific issue and we're not getting in the weeds. Conceptually, it makes all the sense to me that if any organization is seeking dues from any individual, it should be that individual's right to then pay that organization. That's easy.
But not in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania belong to the union.
Right. And I do want to say one other thing, and it's off topic. But there are 4 of us running together, Rich, Cindy, and I, and there's a 4th, and his name's Brad Strasser. He's flying a plane somewhere. And I just want to tell you, we need Brad Strasser on this school board. I just want to put that out. Thank
Okay, one more question, and you can both, somebody on either side. Do you believe it is possible to save money, not raise taxes, without cutting, save money, not raise taxes, without cutting curriculum programs? Is that asking too much, or is that possible?
I'll answer that question. You have to be able to do that, and I firmly believe that you can do that. Before I mentioned, I said one of the biggest assets any organization has is its employees. And I've been in enough places in my corporate career to know that when you sit down and have a committed, engaged employee force, you will find savings that you never dreamed you could ever find, but you've got to get them engaged. So I am 100% convinced that if you have that kind of an employee organization and it takes commitment from the top to the bottom, not only can you save money, you'll probably save more money than you thought you ever could save, and you're certainly not going to cut any programs. In fact, you might even be able to find enough money to increase programs. So I'm a firm believer that you can do that. But you got to have the employee engagement, and you got to have the commitment from your administration to get that happen. And you have to not be afraid of having employees rock the boat and be concerned that perhaps you might look bad in their eyes.
Yes, we've done that in East Stroudsburg. We've done cyber school for our students. We've added dozens of classes which are minimally cost. We've had, so we have, again, whether it's Chinese or it might be Latin or something else kids are taking, and so we've done that. We've added many classes by doing this specific thing. We do go to the teachers, we look at class levels, and some classes we will not cut, even though there might be only a handful in there, because there are the advanced math, science, other classes that we have. We've also added the college classes where kids can take the advanced placement classes where kids are taking that. So there are opportunities for our students, and we have done it, and we continue to do that, saving taxpayers money. And again, 2 years in a row, we haven't raised taxes and we haven't cut programs, and we're looking for a third year this year. The budget process started a month ago, and we've already looked ahead. Again, we've planned ahead for the spikes for the next 2 years for health care and for pensions in East Stroudsburg. We've looked ahead. We're not like the grasshopper and the ant running around, and we've looked ahead, and all we're asking for is another 4 years to give us another chance to, again, to right the ship in the right direction, to keep us moving for a better educational system for everybody. Thank you.
All right, one more over here. Bruce, did you raise your hand about that? No. Oh, okay. Did anybody want to hear? You're good? That's it. That's the last question. That's the last question. Did you?
Yes. I'd like to try to answer that last question, and not with, let's say, what possibly can be done, but specifically what has been done, not anywhere in the state of Pennsylvania except here in Monroe County. Because 2 years ago, Pocono Mountain School District's board had cut $23 million out of their budget because the newly elected board said, we're not going to take it anymore. We know there's fat in this budget. You, Mr. and Mrs. Administration, find $23 million. They zeroed it out within a 3-month period of time. So the fat is there. You have to make sure, as school board members, that the administration has a dictum to go in and find what those cuts can be. Following it 1 year forward, Pocono Mountain School District is having a tax decrease this year. And it really had to do with the change of a board, with a change of an attitude, with cooperation of the unions, and the taxpayers of Monroe County cannot afford the structure for property taxes that we currently have. And there are 2 bills in Harrisburg right now that would amend that and probably bring substantial relief to the people who are losing their homes. That's my 2 cents worth. I want to thank all of you for coming out. We have these meetings every month, the 4th Monday of every month, same time, same place, and we encourage you to come out because there are a myriad of subjects that we address at these meetings, all with taxpayer concern. So again, I want to thank you. If we don't get out of here, by 9 o'clock, they will lock the doors and you'll have a lot of reading to do. Thanks for coming.